Hey guys, welcome to the channel. Today we are live in our Pro Academy Mastermind. I've got a room here full of people that we're going to be training today on generating leads, increasing sales and maximizing their profit. But today we've got a guest speaker, Ying Tan. He built a 200-person mortgage brokerage. I've done a previous podcast episode with him, which we'll put a link in the description below for you. But he actually ended up exiting that brokerage for millions of pounds, I would imagine. I have no idea. He won't disclose it. But you're going to get key insights from someone who has started in 2006, built a 30-person business, downsized to 4 or 5 people post-credit crunch in 2008, and then gone on to build a 200-person, £12 million a year empire, and managed to successfully exit to Connell's estate agency as well. So I hope you enjoy this episode. It's going to be fantastic fun. As always, make sure that you subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and hit me up with any comments below that you want any questions or answers to. Hope you enjoy this episode. How much do you think tech plays a huge part in growing a business?
Good question. So, I mean, you know, I'm clearly biased given and see my career trajectory as it's gone over the last year since I've exited. You know, clearly I believe tech is going to continue to disrupt the market, but not in a way like the likes of your Habitos and Trussels have come in and tried to automate it and kind of dehumanize it, or more how, and I like to use the word, the Iron Man analogy, where tech will come in, make us more efficient. You know, so if you're doing 5 or 10 applications a month, you know, why aren't you doing 20 or 30? Because frankly, you're doing a lot of duplication. You're going to be doing a lot of, you know, re-enter of data, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, I think, you know, tech needs to come in to help embrace us, to make us more productive, so we can spend more time on doing what we're good at as advisors, is to advise, right, and deliver solutions. And I think, you know, if I can be bold enough to say that, I think you're blinded if you think that tech is not going to play some way in the next 2, 3, 4 years. And some of the technology out there, which isn't even in our industry, bear in mind, if you think of all these industries that have been disrupted, we're like down there as a mortgage industry because of the complexity of what we do. But some of the technology that I've seen in the last 12 months, if implemented, you kind of think, wow, you know, things like OCR, optical character recognition, where you don't have to do a fact find. You know, you can just upload your bank statements and your utility bills, your pay slips, and it will extract the right data, pre-populate your fact finds. You know, why wouldn't you want to do that? Because it saves you an hour. Then you're allowed to spend time really getting to know the customer and understanding them, rather than just saying how much do you earn, you know, £50,000. You know. What's your affordability? How much you spend on your gym membership? You know, those type of questions we can take away so we can really add value and build relationships.
Yeah, and it's vital that we are building relationships with clients. How important do you think it is, and how much of a play do you think tech will have in follow-up with clients and maintaining relationships with them?
I mean, to me, you know, even if you've got no tech, the most basic way, you know, in the days when we set up the buy-to-let business, which became Dynamo in 2006, there was no real tech. You know, we used to use just a calendar and a handwritten diaries and make sure I call this client. And I think, you know, if you want to truly, you know, conversion, our business is all about conversion. You know, however lead source it is, whether it be online, accountants, estate agents, you know, your objective is to make your conversion as high as possible. You know, and whilst we used to push our advisors, you know, make sure you close the deal on the first call, and, you know, make sure you keep them on the phone and all that type of stuff, you know, because as soon as you let go, your conversion rate goes down. The reality is that's quite hard. So you have to often follow up. And having that discipline, you know, in my opinion, we never recruited necessarily all the best salespeople. You know, when you're looking for your recruitment to grow your business, yeah, it's great, there's lots of good salespeople, but, you know, our business is not about sales, double glazing, you know, making people buy stuff they don't want to buy. It's about being a trusted advisor, really giving them added value. So I think it's really important that you are disciplined, whether a system, you know, creates those tasks for you, or whether you're disciplined enough to do those follow-ups, because, you know, my experience with the many advisors we recruited, what separates the top advisors from the poor advisors is how disciplined they are in following processes to say, okay, after 24 hours, I'll do a follow-up call. And it's being politely persistent, right? It's not going to, you know, why aren't you responding to my call? You know, when are you going to respond to my recommendation? It's about saying, you know, I'm here, you know, give them more insight, you know, find that compelling event, you know, why do they need to act, you know, and you know, financially validate why they should act now, and that's being a true trusted advisor. And I think whether it be tech or, you know, if you're old school and you've got diaries or whatever, if you're not doing good follow-ups, you're not going to be able to build good pipelines, build your good business.
So with us being now in the hardest market that I can remember since 2008, you obviously pre-credit crunch had 30 people and had to go back to 4 or 5. Right. You know, what similarities are you seeing for advisors who have never been through a crunch, who have never been through raising interest rates? You know, what similarities are you seeing between now and back then? Because you obviously grew massively as a result.
Well, they're not huge similarities at the moment, because thankfully I've exited the last 12 months now, so I can sit here quite smug. But yeah, look, we set up in 2006. We got 30 staff, and I was thinking, wow, this is great, you know. We always had a vision. I had a vision, you know, certainly to start, scale, and exit my business. But clearly, we had to rethink things. And there were 2 other founders at the time, and I bought them out during the credit crunch. So I used that opportunity, you know, because they didn't believe in the business anymore. They thought the market was going to collapse. I still believed in the business. And, you know, I kept believing and kept doing it. But, you know, it was tough. You know, whilst we survived it and we grew from, well, we went from 30 to 4, you know, we sat around a table, not too dissimilar from this, and we wrote on a piece of paper who wants to stay and who wants to go. I was the only one who said stay. The other 2 founders said go. So over 6 to 12 months, I bought them out, and probably the best decision I made, because it was at the lowest point for me, you know, but it was tough, you know, get the violin out, but I didn't pay myself from 2008 to 2012. You know, you pay your staff first, you pay, you know, your third parties first, your suppliers, and we don't always get appreciated as entrepreneurs, as business owners. You know, they don't understand those sacrifices, and they shouldn't necessarily, because, you know, the big event that I got a year ago is because of the sacrifice I made, and that's why I'm an entrepreneur in business. I'm willing to don't pay myself for a few years so I can build that business up. And you have to have that long-term thinking, and it's very hard, but if you're an entrepreneur and you're a business owner that has a true goal of what you want to do, and everyone is different, by the way. Some advisors want to be just lifestyle business, and that's absolutely fine. You know, mine was to build a business. My background, for those you don't know, is you know, ex-investment banker, built up quite a large property portfolio, and I set the buy-to-let business up because I was going to my mortgage broker, tell them what to do, when to do, and how to do it. For bloody hell, if this is the best mortgage broker can do, I'm going to do it myself. And that's what I did. And I never had been a mortgage broker before I became CMAP qualified, set the business up. I was DA, and I kind of ripped up the rule book and said, well, this is how I would want it to do as a client. I didn't have any preconceived ideas, and I think that was one of the reasons we grew. But the agility, just to kind of link it back to your question, what's important is the agility to make those tough decisions, because if you do, you know, I'm not sure the makeup here, but if you're business owners and you've got a team of staff and you have to make tough decisions, you have to make those tough decisions. You know, it's a necessary evil. But it's very important to remain agile. You know, if I was still at the helm at Dynamo, we're not quite 200 strong anymore, but you know, it's still over 100. I would not be able to move the business as quickly, because you know, we're a long-established business with certain ways of doing things. You know, I presume many of you are still relatively new in your journeys, and you've got to make sure you've got that agility. But to make those tough decisions and to see the bigger picture, and not just and make sure you use your customer contact strategy really well. You know, you've got rising interest rates. This is the best reason, you know. It kills me to feel people waiting. You know, we all know, we touched on it just then, you know, we're talking about 0.5, 0.75. I am sure you'd all, if you had £100 to put on, we're going to bet there's going to be a rate rise, whether it be 0.25 or 0.75 or 1, is going to be a rate rise. How many of your staff are actually making those proactive calls into their customers now? You know, why are we waiting till 12 o'clock today for the announcement? We all know it's going to happen, and it's just about being on the front foot, and that's what separates you from your competitors, because whether we believe or not, thankfully for us, there are a lot of crap advisors out there. So that gives us the opportunity, who want to be good, to be on the front foot and try and you know, be ahead of the game.
So the guys who are in the room, and obviously a lot of people that are listening, will have, you said you started with a team of 4 after downsizing. Who were the 4? What was the makeup?
It was myself, there was the IT, what is IT director now, there was one other advisor, and there was my my executive assistant that did everything basically, from HR, accounts, etc., etc. So I had to roll my sleeves up. You know, so when I set the businesses up, it was me, myself, and I in a small regions office in Guildford. Obviously, I did all of the advising, I did all the operation, everything. We got to a size where I said quickly, I need to take a step back, and that was only when we were about 8 or 9 strong. I'd already stopped advising, although I'd helped mentor the other guys. But then when we had to downsize again, I had to roll the sleeves up and pick up the phone, and I didn't mind that because I led by example. And I think that put me in good stead as I grew the business to the size it was, because I had done every single job that I ever employed someone to do. And they could never tell me, oh, it's going to take me 4 hours to do this. Well, hang on a minute, I'm, probably more inefficient than you, but I did an hour. Why is it taking like, and this is the formula that works. And I can honestly say, hand in heart, our formula from day one never really evolved much into 15 years when it was just me, myself, and I to a company. That whole training induction program we used to kind of model on the way I conducted business as a one-man band. So. Yeah, that was a makeup, and for me that was important because having Penny, who's still with me now, she was supposed to be here today actually, but she's still with me on now in my new business ventures. She was the most junior person who joined the business at that time. I think she was 20, 21 years old. She's been with us 15 years, and she made my job easy because she was good at all the things I weren't good, which is being organised and doing the administrative side and doing the chase ups, being relentless, while I could focus on what I was good at, was business development, sales, speaking to customers and inspiring people. So I think getting that makeup is quite often scary. Oh, I'm going to spend that salary on a person who's not writing business. But if you get the right person that can work with you well enough, they will ensure you will write more business to not only just pay for that, but to create more revenue so you can keep growing. And we grew organically. I'm really proud of the fact that, I don't think it will happen much now because I think the world is different where there's a lot more venture capital, external money, Dragon's Den is fashionable. But back then, it was not so easy to get funding. So I grew the business organically. And the only way you can do that is you've got to reinvest in the business. So when you've got a spare $5,000, you could take it out, get that, you could buy nice cars or whatever. And if that's your prerogative, absolutely fine. But mine was to grow the business. And I could only do that by keeping that money in the business and saying, well, that $5,000 could get me another administrator, which would give me 4 more applications that I'm going to be writing, which will give me this amount of money, which I can make $7,000 extra next month. And it's kind of that organic growth, which eventually snowballs, although at first it seems hard slog.
How do you overcome that mindset of delegation? Because I know that's something that, particularly with an employee mindset, and you've clearly scaled your team quite rapidly, but how do you actually let go and say, you do this for me, and have full faith and control that they're going to do it, as good as you?
I could paint a really rosy story, equally a very bad one. You make lots of bad recruits, as many as you do good recruits. And I think the first and foremost, you've got to recruit well. You need to find the right people. And if you don't recruit well, you make those decisions very early on. But you just have to believe, you have to have faith and you know what they should be doing because you've probably done it yourself. So you know what good looks like. And you mustn't be afraid to speak up if it's not at the level you want. And, the reality is if you want to scale, you have to delegate. And I'm a control freak. I still am. Even when we were 200 strong, I was getting involved in stuff I shouldn't get involved in. And you need to build a strong enough team for them to say, hang on, Ying, what are you doing? You don't need to get involved in organising the favours for the Christmas party, because that's the type of stuff I think is important because I want to boost them around on my team. I say, yeah, we should have, some Jägermeister so they get a bit drunk and all that type of stuff. And to be fair, I generally got my way, but that was a quick delegation and they did the buying. But the point I'm saying is that you've A, got to recruit well. And B, you've got to have faith in what you've done and make those decisions. If it doesn't work, then you know what good looks like, and make those decisions quickly. And that's the only way you're going to kind of scale.
And you've got an accountancy background, you're a qualified accountant, and obviously investment banker. What's your rules for scale, recruitment, managing cash flow, whether it be the 4th, 5th, 6th, 10th, 30th hire?
Yeah, it's great. First of all, which a lot of people don't always calculate is what it costs for every single employee. When you onboard somebody, what is their minimum break-even point? How much is it? And as a broad level, at our previous business, it was about $4,500. They need to be bringing $4,500. And what you want is everyone to be bringing 10 grand, right? Double digits was the initial aim. Everyone should be bringing 10 grand in, and then they're a profitable person. But and you've got to, if you don't have an accounting background, you're not necessarily financially astute that way, then engage in accounting. You've got to get them PCs, you've got to get them leads, and it depends on the model. To be fair, all of our team was employed. So everyone was employed. We didn't have the self-employed model. They were all employed. So it's slightly different. But for the employed model, you've got to cost how much it's going to cost them. And you have to monitor the metrics. Again, certainly it's better now. But 15 years ago, you'd ask, well, who are your top advisors? They wouldn't know. Where's your league table? Where do you stand? Not sure. How much business did you do? how can you not know your numbers? You know, you've got to know your numbers. And if you get to understand your numbers, then you're able to use that to kind of validate whether someone is working or not. So you talk about, you know, cash flow. You know, cash is king. I know it's an old cliche, but it's important. But you have to understand the basic numbers of what it takes when you're on board on how much it's going to cost. Make sure you've got the money in the bank, you know, and make sure you know the break-even points and the numbers that they've got to be hit to make them profitable, and how much time you can afford to give them. You know, so you should know all of those numbers. So when they're not hitting those numbers, and you know, we built a great tech system whereby every time a deal was done, it would, you know, you enter the milestone onto our CRM system, which we built in-house, and their face would appear on a big screen like this, and it, you know, it would play Simply the Best, Tina Turner, or whatever their tune is specific to that person. It was like the modern version of the ship bell, so to speak. And that was great from a competitive environment, because they had a big open floor salespeople, and they wanted to beat each other. You know, if they saw that person do that, I want to do that. If they saw that person on the phone, they wanted to do that. So, yeah, you know, create that environment is really, really important.
And in recruiting the team and managing the cash flow of those team, what would be your top 3 non-negotiables in a hire that you're going to make?
Top 3 non-negotiables in a hire. You know, we always used to say, before I get to the top 3, you know, it doesn't matter if you're an MBA graduate from Harvard or a burger from McDonald's, okay? As long as you've got the right mindset and attitude. So number 1 is mindset, you know. 100%, you need to have the right mindset. You know, we believe, and I believe it's true, you know, we've recruited people without any qualifications, straight out of school at 16, and, you know, it's, in fact, yesterday, I'll say a story, you know, only yesterday I saw on LinkedIn, one of my previous employees who I recruited at 19 years old, has been there at 10 years, not even 30 years old there, is now head of training and development there. Fabulous employee, and I'm really proud when they came on board. They had no qualifications, you know, they were a bit of a rude boy when they came in, you know, diamond earrings, and I was like, oh my God, what is this? But you know what, they're one of the best hires, and he didn't have a degree, he didn't have a great background on being an advisor, he started from fresh, didn't even know how to spell the word mortgage, let alone sell a mortgage. So, you know, but what he had is a superb mindset, a superb attitude, and that willingness to learn, you know, so there you go. I said the 3 without even thinking what I was saying. But yeah, so those are the 3 I would say when you recruit. But it's not. But at the same time, right? You know, and I'll caveat it. I was growing a business which is not necessarily suitable for everybody, because I had time. You know, we had that long-term thinking. You know, sometimes you want to get someone who can get up and running straight away, because these people were often not breaking even for 6 months. Some business might not have that time or luxury, so you might have to get someone with 3 years experience who you know might have been self-employed and can bring a client bank or whatever it might be, or you know they understand the industry, they can get up straight away. So every model is different. There's no one rule fits all. But what worked for me and what for our business was getting fresh people who were out for the industry, and we trained them from scratch. But I could tell you lots of successful businesses that had a slightly different model, and it's whatever works. But those are the 3 non-negotiables.
Okay. And you said that you started with the mindset of starting, growing, scaling, and exiting. Yeah. You know, for the guys that are in the room and many that are listening, you've got that thought of start with the end in mind. Mm-hmm. You know, how would you map out that end in mind? Because everybody, you know, we've got 10 people in the room right now, everybody's destination is completely different. Absolutely. So how would you advise somebody to decide their end and then reverse engineer that to get there?
The first time is going back to numbers. You know, whether you're capable of doing it yourself or you engage a third party, you should have a high level, broad spectrum of forecasting your numbers. You know, and it comes down to, you know, we make our money from proc fees, broker fees. You know, if you're a fee charging broker, life insurance. So you know all that. So you should be saying, well, if I have one advisor doing 10 applications a month, then my average mortgage, you know, the average case side is 150,000. The average prop fee is this, the average broker fee is this, and you can start modelling it, right? And then you say, well, what if I had 2 people? How does that look? You know, and what if I got a better system to increase my productivity? So you can start playing with those levers, but more or less that's how it is. And then, you know, depending what your objective is, you know, whether you want to sell the business for whatever, and not everyone wants to sell a business. Some people want to work forever and just have a regular income. So, you know, you need to work out what your objective is, and then, you know, build a forecast. But also don't be afraid to pivot, because I think there are very few people who can put their hand on heart, and I'm certainly still one of them, that says the forecast and plan I had on day one when I set the business completely changed, you know, by the time I exited 15 years later, and that's truthful. It was within the same direction, but, you know, of course you shouldn't be afraid to pivot. And just because you're doing a forecast and you say, well, it's going to change, so why bother? It doesn't matter, because you still need to have something to aim towards, and you still need something to work towards. But if you have to pivot or evolve during that time because of a credit crunch, because of, an energy crisis or whatever it might be, then so be it. But you need to kind of plan for that, and then know your numbers. I can't emphasize that enough. It's not difficult. You work your numbers out to do cost comparisons of a 2-year fix versus a standard variable rate. Why should they remortgage straight away? It's exactly that. It's some basic mathematics saying, what is my unit economics? How many sales do I need to make to get this level? And therefore you can say, well, if this is the number I want, how many staff do I need? If I need this many staff, how much money do I need to make to be able to afford to have my next hire? And when can I do that next hire? And you can start building that into a forecast. And even if you don't have to build a financial forecast, you should be able to understand the mechanics of it and tell a professional, and then they can start building it for you. And that £1,000 or £2,000 that you might spend, or more depending on who you're using, is, in my opinion, one of the best monies you can spend. Even better if you can do it yourself, because then it doesn't cost anything, of course.
And an exit is a really clear, definitive finish line. Yes. But for those that want the lifestyle business that provides them with a 5, 10, 15 grand constant income every month, how important is it, do you think, to factor in the type of life that you want to live into that business planning as well? Because you've got the numbers, but then on the other side of the coin, you've actually got how you live your life, what time you get up, what time you go to bed, who you spend your time with, how many holidays you have. Yeah. How important do you think the lifestyle element is? The
lifestyle is imperative. My why, without spending the next half an hour talking about, but at a very high level, my dad came over from Malaysia, 1959, with 20 quid in his pocket at the age of 19 years old, and he hitchhiked here, and I can barely walk to the town centre without getting a bus, and clearly I don't get the bus either. So, it's the point I'm trying to make is, they sacrificed a lot, and that gave me the hunger, the drive, and the ambition, and that's, I think, the DNA I am. And now I'm a father of 5 children, and spending time with them. I've got a 17-year-old at the oldest, who was 1 year old when I set my previous business up, and 2, 3-year-old girls. So I was lucky enough, because I've exited, to spend 6 weeks summer holidays actually doing holidays, and I was travelling around Europe, etc., etc. So to your point, Gary, is that it's everything. We do what we do for our why. And my why is my family. Everyone's why might be different. But there's no point working your ass into the ground if you can't spend that money all the time, whether it be time or money that's important to you. But you've got to get that balance right. But, I think you're a fool when you're setting a business if you think that you can have that balance from day one, because, I believe I had to work hard then, so I don't have to work hard now. The reality is I'd never, as much as I like Gary, there's no way, if I was still at the business I am, was previously, that I'd be here talking to you guys, because I just wouldn't have the time. I have the time now, but I've worked extremely hard in my life to get there. But I'd made sure I got back to read my son at the time the book to go to bed. I made sure I didn't work on a Saturday, that I went to the football matches with them. So you've got to be disciplined like that, and don't look back when you're 65, and say, God, wish I spent more time with my family, and and that doesn't matter whether it's a lifestyle business or whether you have the big grand plans that I had. You still should make sure you get that balance right, but don't be naive to think that you can have it from day one and rock in at do 3-hour days and create the successful business you want to give you the income you want, because I think you've got to be very lucky if that happens. Most of us are not that lucky.
Yeah, nice. And since the last time we spoke, you've obviously now exited Dynamo. Mm-hmm. What was your biggest lesson in the journey of actually exiting out of Dynamo for anyone that wants to kind of exit? What was how did it start, how did it go, and how did it finish in some respects?
Well, the fact that I've exited is obviously it's good, so it went well. But at the same time, it's not easy. Where does one start with an exit? It's like, well, who's going to buy my business? Who's going to invest in my business? We might not be connected. So, it's like anything in life. How do you get your mortgage opportunities? You network, you meet the right people, and that's no different. That's how the deal that I did with Countrywide in 2016. At the time they were a FTSE 250 business, £1 billion valuation. Was at an awards do that we're probably all used to going to here and now, but quite often depending on your goal, and like I said, we all got different levels of expectations and goals, but that was always my objective, and I think I knew who I wanted to identify before they knew who we were, because and I think that's important. So you almost have a hit list. These are I looked at Countrywide and said, well, they are Great business, but very much face-to-face, very much a estate agency. Our strengths are, and residential, our strengths were buy-to-let at the time. We were phone-based. So I felt there was something that there could be some synergy. So I identified that synergy necessarily before them, and then I went out and I networked and I knew people there, and you have loose conversations, and it turns into a formal meeting, and then it builds from there really. So, but mine was a 5-year, I guess, tie-in, earn-out, however you want to word it. And it has ups and downs, because the reality is partnership is very different. Having especially a corporate partnership of the size, of a business that I was working with, is very different to be able to make quick, agile decisions. So you make sure when you have those businesses, you retain enough autonomy, those deals, so you can retain your agility. That's really important. So make sure you. Whether it be higher shareholding or something in the agreement that gives you the ability to make those decisions. And thankfully, I had a great partner, and even though it was a big corporate, I still, called the shots. I could move things quickly, et cetera, et cetera. But things can change. Obviously towards the end of my 5-year deal, Countrywide struggled, and thankfully, Connells came in and picked up where they left off. But that's again goes to show that nothing can be fully planned, because that wasn't in the agreement. But that's why you've got to be agile and be able to, confident enough to pivot. That's super important.
And what were the key components that made them want to buy your business?
I think there's part of it. I could say me, but the reality is you've got to make yourself not that person, because if it's all about you, then guess what? No one's going to want you to buy your business unless you stay for the rest of your life, which, that's the whole point. You don't want to be there. So you've got to build a scalable business that can operate, without you. That doesn't matter if I'm there or not. And my litmus test, actually, sadly, in 2018, my mum was very sick, and before she passed, I was away from the business 4 or 5 months. And guess what? They wrote more business when I was away than when I was there. So that kind of told me something as well. But you need to create that business. But that comes with scale, because when you're 3, 4, 5 strong, guess what? Even if it's not heavy-sided to you, which probably is because you're the owner or the entrepreneur or whatever, even if it's not, that's only 20% dependent on you. But when you've got 20, 30, 40, the bigger you get, clearly the scale you get, you don't suddenly need that dependency is less, and you're much more about the strategic direction, not the day-to-day, And certainly the business I was at before, at one stage, maybe it wasn't going to grow as much without me, but certainly it didn't need me there to function. And you've got to build, if you want to build a business that attracts someone else, it goes without saying that it can't be solely dependent on you.
Yeah. And last question then, based on your experience, the advisors that you speak to, the market that we're currently in, what are the non-negotiable things that you think an advisor, a business owner, someone, who, irrespective of the business size they want to build, what are the must-do things to thrive in 2023?
Look, I don't think you can kind of fluff it up anyway. I think it's going to be a really tough 12, 24 months. We'll know very soon whether interest rates are going up. The betting man says it's anything from 0.5 to 0.75%. That won't affect a lot of people, because guess what? What are the products you sold? Probably 95% of the products you sold the last 3 years, fixed rates. So they're going to go, oh God, great, but that's not impacting people yet. Energy prices going up, it's going to be a tough time. Like Gary alluded, 2008 is probably the closest. But the difference between 2008 was led by the financial services crisis. This is led by something quite different. So I don't think it will be quite as catastrophic as it was in 2008, which, for those of you here, was pretty brutal. But if the non-negotiables and the important things you need to focus on is to have that discipline. And whether it be a credit crunch or a recession looming or whatever, it's the same non-negotiables. It's about making sure you're the best. And if the market does dip, guess what? You're in the top 5%. So people will fall before you, and actually use it as an opportunity. I genuinely believe the credit crunch in 2008 was the making of our business, because we had some far bigger businesses that were far less agile. There was a company called the Money Centre, which was a buy-to-let specialist brokerage that had 200-300 staff, and they were massive. And I remember looking and going, wow, they were great. If only we could be like that. But they couldn't pivot or change as quickly as us, and when things went pear-shaped, they went pear-shaped pretty bad for them. So, it's making sure that you're agile, making sure that you're disciplined and focused. And I've written a book on it. Don't push too many trolleys, and that's all about don't juggle too many balls, don't spin too many plates. So I think it's very important you develop your area of expertise. That you can make money in mortgage. I remember a lot of people for years said to me, making life insurance, and I knew that life insurance was massive, and for you guys, especially if you're doing lots of resi, I'm sure you do lots of life insurance, and you should be, absolutely. But in my early days, I didn't, because I didn't have the expertise there, and because we were doing buy-to-let mortgages, it wasn't as much needed as it was for residential, and I wanted to focus. People said, Ying, you should do second charge. And I said, I know there's loads of opportunities in second charges, but I want to be the very best I can at buy-to-let mortgages first. And even if you look at Amazon, they became the best bookseller in the world before they started selling everything under the sun. And I think it's really important that you create some kind of niche or some kind of focus that makes you the best at that and makes you nail that before you move on. Don't get sidetracked, because especially during a tough environment, when you're looking for lots of different revenue opportunities, sometimes you get sidetracked. And I think one of the reasons for the success of the previous business is I say true to my roots and why I wanted to set up the buy-to-let business, and that was because of the buy-to-let offering that it had and the strength. Yes, we pivoted to all of the above: life insurance, second charges, commercial, residential, at some stage over those 15 years, but it wasn't until we became the best in class at buy-to-let.
Yeah, Ying, thanks, mate.
It's all right. My pleasure.